Greetings once again. Today I want to change the subject a little bit to that which is in the resurrections, the first, the second resurrection, concerning the living and the dead, what life is all about, what death is, and also about the spirit of prophecy. And the spirit of prophecy is nothing but a gift of the Holy Spirit that's told that we should pray for above all things. And I never really understood that until I started praying for the spirit of prophecy. And of course, I'm not saying at all that I've got the full spirit of prophecy. In fact, before I started praying for such, which I encourage you to do as well, okay, this here is what I possessed prior to praying for the spirit of prophecy. This here is the entire scriptures. That's my entire life. That is my entire understanding prior to my praying for such. And I've been of this faith for over half my life, knowing my Father's name and my brother Yahshua's name, the name of Yahweh and Yahshua Messiah. However, I thought that I was very wise, exceedingly knowledgeable about what things were, and then the more I went on in life, the more I realized how stupid I was and how ignorant, and I knew just this much. Alright? Now, when you do receive the spirit of prophecy, and I'm not saying at all that I've got the full thing. The thing is, it's kind of like you get a coloring book, any child's coloring book, and you'll see that there is, pictures that are just drawn, but yet for the child, they're given crayons and to fill in the pictures with different colors and such, which actually brings that picture alive. And of course, that's what this is, okay? Problem is, this is just a blank slate. The scriptures that I thought I knew amounted to that, which is on that picture there, it's pretty much blank. The same as every preacher out there, every Nicolaitan that's over these religious organizations, they don't have that picture yet. They have zero for understanding of what scriptures are talking about. Many of them are actually zealous about desiring to preach the truth. However, they have had no truth to preach. And after one prays for the gift of the Holy Spirit, for the spirit of prophecy to come, the end result is more or less something such as this. Okay, and this is a picture of both the living and the dead. Okay, there's two children in this picture that are still pretty much of the living. I hope that I am, but the other three there up in the top and in the direct middle, they're more or less of the dead. But who are the living and the dead? Today we don't really have that understanding. In fact, people don't understand what death is. They have their ideas, but their ideas have nothing to do with what's actually found within the scriptures. However, I did find something in Ruth chapter 2 and verse 20. And this is where Naomi, was the mother-in-law to Ruth. And what she said here was, and Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed, the father, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." Okay? And again, Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." But this Naomi spoke about the living and the dead. And of course, that's what's going to be raised in the first resurrection, is the living and the dead. Those that are raised in the second resurrection will be the dead. There won't be any living amongst the second resurrection. Even after the 1,000-year millennial reign is completed, nobody during the 1,000-year millennial reign will be given the qualifications to have life everlasting. They'll simply live. Satan's going to be bound up, and I hope to get into that in this here series as well. But the living and the dead, Yahshua talked about this one fellow that had come up to him, and he's like, "Oh, Messiah, what is it that I must do to have salvation?" And Yahshua tells him to follow him. And the fellow says, "Well, my father died. Let me go bury him." And Yahshua said, "Well, let the dead bury the dead." Now, he wasn't talking about a skeleton getting up with a shovel and, digging a hole for him and throwing him on in the hole. That's nothing to do with it. What he was talking about was, today we have the living and the dead on this earth. The living are those that have opportunity because they understand the truth. They can see the difference in a name. And a lot of people still have a problem with the name of Yahweh. They say, "Well, if I call on God, he'll know me." And, "Oh, if I call on Jesus, well, Jesus will know me." Well, they do, but Yahweh and Yahshua don't. Fact remains, if you've ever done a search or tried to create a family tree, and say your great-great-great-grandmother's name was Jane Epson, okay? Well, Jane Epson should know who you're talking about when you're doing this family tree. So instead of putting Jane Epson in that family tree to bring down the lineage to present, instead of Jane Epson, put in Tammy MacArthur. Now, certainly if you call on Tammy MacArthur, Jane Epson will know that you're talking about her, and therefore the family line coming down to you shouldn't be altered at all. It should be strengthened because you're calling on someone other than Jane Epson, saying that this other name should be what it should be, and in your understanding it should be. And that's why there's two resurrections, because some people just cannot come to the understanding of what the truth really and truly is. Anyway, here in Matthew 5, verses 43 through 46, Yahshua is speaking, and he says in verse 43, chapter 5 of Matthew, "You have heard that it is said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, in order that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise," talking about the S-U-N, not the S-O-N as in Yahshua, but he's talking about, the thing up in the sky that keeps us warm and sometimes gets blocked out with clouds. "For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the righteous, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax gatherers do the same?" Now, here it's kind of hard to understand. He's saying to love those, that are your enemies. Well, why are they enemies? It's simply because they don't know the commandments. They don't know the laws. They are of the dead. If you have an enemy, if you're keeping the truth and you're walking in the faith, and if you have an enemy, it's those that are of the dead. Now, they will have an opportunity in the second resurrection. But if these individuals were once of the living, once of those that were of this promise that was delivered to Abraham and all the saints for walking in the truth and in the light, that's one thing. If they have turned and now become the dead, well, they'll be raised in that first resurrection, because the first resurrection is for the living and the dead. And what it means by that is those that are living will live forever. They'll be no longer subject to death. Death will not be able to take them over again, ever. They will be living. There's no way they can die. The same way Satan and her angels will be in the lake of fire burning and smoking forever because they have immortal souls. Well, those that are of the living will be given a mortal soul. Immortal soul. They'll trade in their mortal soul for the immortal soul. Now, I'm turning to Matthew chapter 22 here because I want to show you that, even though Naomi knew that there was the living and the dead, that the Father, he reigns on the living and the dead, and he puts the Son on the living and the dead. And that's because the living have to be tested and tried to see if they qualify to remain living or else turn out to be ashes under the feet of the righteous in that day. Okay, and here in Matthew chapter 22, verse 32 says, I am the father of Abraham and the father of Isaac and the father of Jacob. He is not the father of the dead, but of the living. In other words, Yahweh is the Father of those who know Him. Those who don't know Him call Him God and other such things because they just cannot come to the understanding that Yahweh has a name, and He promised all those that call upon His name. And it's not just saying, oh, Father Yahweh. That's not it. In order to know Yahweh's name, one must walk in the commandments and the laws that Yahshua Messiah became. He fulfilled them by becoming them. And we are commanded to walk exactly as He walked, so therefore we can be of the living as well. Now here in Luke chapter 24 and verse 25, okay, it says something just as wonderful to help, and I'm bringing out small bits here so that when I finish this large picture, you're going to understand what reincarnation's about, why they've had religions that come up over these things, and it's going to explain a whole lot if you can actually grasp what I'm saying. And here in Luke 24 verse 5 it says, and the woman, and as the women, W-O-M-E-N, as in plural woman, okay, so these are women. As the women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, why do you seek the living one among the dead? Okay, so basically when somebody goes to a preacher out there in this world, to the organized religion seeking our true Creator, what you're doing is you're seeking the living by the dead. You're going to the dead to try to find out about the living. And you're not going to find it there. Now, you can be led if you actually do come to the understanding that you need to call upon your Father's name and upon the name of Yahshua Messiah, because there's only one name given in heaven or in hell, this earth. I consider this place hell because that's what it's always been for me. But I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to the flames, and I'm getting used to the disappointments, and I'm becoming thankful for them because it's making me a much better person. Here in Romans chapter 14 and verse 9 it states, for to this end Yahshua died and lived again, that He might be the Messiah of both of the dead and of the living. So right here it's explaining to you that, there are those that call on Jesus, they call on Lord, they call on God and Adonai and Allah and all these different names that they attribute. Even the Muslims believe that, Yahshua was considered a prophet or whatever, and a Messiah. So they do, they call him Muhammad or whatever, Allah, all these different names. And Yahshua knows that these things are going on, but it's for a specific purpose that we'll get into in another video that's going to come up here real shortly. I didn't want to get into this video. Actually, I did not want no part of doing a video today. I woke up in shock to find out it was Friday. Here I thought it was like Monday or Tuesday because I've been so busy making these videos and such, and I've got to prepare for the Sabbath, so I've got my potatoes on the stove cooking right now with some beans and such to keep the living alive. Okay, I do not want to starve. I have to prepare my meals before the Sabbath. I cannot cook on the Sabbath, otherwise I'd be with the rest of the dead. So with this, please look over those scriptures again and try to get a grasp. You need to look at all the other videos I brought out on the resurrection and just all my other videos, because it's bringing us to the point where hopefully you can understand what these two resurrections that are about to come are really all about. Even though one is 1,000 years later, it's still for a purpose. Yahweh's plan is marvelous and wonderful, and all those that we thought was wicked before and deserving to go to hell, well, they was just part of this plan, and Yahweh wants none to perish. Everybody will be resurrected, either in the first resurrection, where those are blessed, where the wicked will be burned and never live again, and the righteous will never die again. But everybody must die. That is, of the dead that are walking around breathing air and eating food, all the dead must die once. But there are some that will be still alive of the living when Yahshua Messiah returns, and they'll be changed in the twinkling of an eye. And that's just facts. So this next time we're going to read in Revelation chapter 20. So if you want to read Revelation 20 right now before you do look at the next video, that would be a great help. So looks like my video's about to run out. I'm going to say to you all, peace, and please consider the words that are coming. Pray for the spirit of prophecy.